There's a reason thousands of hikers on the Appalachian Mountains stick to the marked trails, because stepping off them sometimes leads you to things nobody is ever supposed to see. I never believed that idea for a second, until my friend and I stumbled upon a campsite that looked like its owners had left just minutes ago, but everything inside it said it had been abandoned for years. What we discovered after that was enough to make one of us never return. And this is the whole story. The story started during the last week of last September, when 3 of my friends and I decided to take advantage of the weekend. We decided to hike a section of the Appalachian Trail inside North Carolina. We picked this exact time because the temperatures are mild, and the fall colors make the mountains look completely different from summer. We weren't beginner campers because we were used to going out 2 or 3 times every year. So we prepared our gear carefully, registered our itinerary, and let our families know the area where we'd be spending the next 2 nights. We had paper maps and GPS devices with us, because we know cell service disappears in many parts of the mountains. Our goal wasn't to look for adventure or chase mystery stories. Our main goal was just to get away from the city noise for a few days. If we had the slightest reason to turn back, we would have done it without hesitation. At the visitor center near the trailhead, the ranger checked our camping permits and asked us about our destination. When we told him the spot we picked, he said it was a quiet place that doesn't see much foot traffic this time of year. Then he advised us to make sure we had enough water, because the nearest permanent flowing stream was more than 2 kilometers from the campsite. He didn't say anything weird and didn't warn us about legends, animals, or people. All his advice was practical and logical. And that's what made me feel later that what happened wasn't part of a story known by the locals. Because what happened was something nobody could have expected. Reaching our spot took about 5 hours of steady walking, with short breaks to rest. The weather was perfect and the sky was clear, and the trail was obvious and marked with its well-known white blazes. We passed a few hikers in the first few hours, then human presence started fading away, gradually the deeper we went. As sunset was approaching, we found a flat area between the trees suitable for setting up camp. But before we started pitching our tents, Jack decided to walk ahead a bit to scout the area and make sure there wasn't another campsite nearby. Out of respect for camping etiquette that recommends leaving enough distance between groups, Jack didn't go further than 3 minutes away, then we heard him call out to us. His tone wasn't the tone of someone who found a better spot. It was the tone of someone who saw something he couldn't explain. When we reached him, he didn't speak right away and just pointed at what was ahead of him. About 50 meters off the trail, and between a cluster of hemlock and pine trees, there was the full campsite. A large tent was still set up. We approached the tent with slow steps, and we were raising our voices while talking so whoever was inside would notice, and so we wouldn't invade anyone's privacy. We didn't notice anything. We reached the tent and looked inside, finding a neatly arranged stone fire pit, 2 folding chairs, and a clothesline hanging a faded towel. At first, we thought the owners had gone out for a short walk and would be back in a bit, so we called out loud more than once so we wouldn't startle anyone. The metal cookware was set on a small camping table, and right next to it was a mug holding dried coffee residue stuck to its sides. Inside the tent, there were sleeping bags and arranged clothes, a flashlight, and an open novel with a bookmark placed right in the middle of the pages, as if its owner stopped reading just to come back in a few minutes. But the thing that made silence take over all of us wasn't any of that. It was the food inside metal cans that were completely rusted, and plastic wrappers, some of which had crumbled from the effect of the sun and humidity, while the tent and furniture stayed in puzzlingly good condition. The scene didn't look like a campsite left by its owners this morning, nor a campsite abandoned by its owners years ago. It looked as if time had passed over everything in it in a completely different way. None of us went inside the tent at first, because there's a rule followed among campers that basically says, if you come across a campsite whose owners seem to be away, don't mess with their stuff. They might just be on a short walk, or gathering firewood, or following a nearby trail. We waited several minutes, then called out loudly more than once, but the mountains gave us back nothing but the echo of our voices. Jack looked at his watch and said the sun would set in 40 minutes, and that we couldn't just stand here forever. He suggested we report it to the park rangers in the morning if nobody showed up. As for now, we had to make sure the place was actually empty before moving away. There was nothing concerning about his suggestion, and it was totally logical, so we all agreed with him. I put on a lightweight glove and slowly pushed open the fabric door of the tent, while the rest of my friends stood behind me, watching silently. From the inside, everything looked unusually neat. The tent wasn't in a messy state like usually happens on camping trips that last more than a day. The sleeping bags were folded carefully, the backpacks were placed next to each other, and even the cooking utensils were cleaned and lined up inside a plastic crate. On the ground, I found an old local newspaper dated October from 7 years ago. At first, I thought someone had brought it to start a fire, but when I picked it up, I found it dry and brittle to the point that it started crumbling between my fingers. Jack picked up a small notebook that was sitting on top of one of the bags and flipped through it quickly. Then he said most of its pages were blank except for the last page. We all looked at him, but he didn't read it out loud. He kept staring at it for a few seconds, then closed the notebook and set it back down. I asked him what was written in it. He replied after hesitating, "Just notes about the trip, nothing important." I wasn't convinced by his answer, but at the same time, I didn't push him, because my attention was focused on something else. There was a thin layer of dust over most of the items, but right in the middle of the tent, the floor was noticeably clean, as if someone had stood there a short while ago. There were no clear boot prints, no mud, nor any mark indicating a recent entry. Yet the middle of the tent was different from the rest of the place. I leaned down to examine it closer. I noticed that the tent door zipper was moving slightly even though there was no wind at all. I immediately raised my head and looked at the doorway. The trees outside were completely still. Even the thin branches weren't moving. I felt a slight tightness in my chest and stepped out of the tent without commenting. One of my friends suggested we pitch our tents about 200 meters away from that campsite, so we wouldn't trespass on the owner's privacy if they returned. And indeed, we moved to a suitable spot near a small water stream. While setting up the tent, our conversation didn't stop about the tent we had seen. Jack said that maybe it belonged to a climber who lost his life in an accident, and his stuff was left behind after the investigation ended. But I immediately argued with his point because national parks don't leave camping gear in place for years. It gets cleared out after search operations end or handed over to the owners' families. Nobody found a convincing explanation, and as time went on, we tried to change the subject. Except that a strange feeling stayed with us, as if the presence of that campsite so close to us made the whole place look different. Shortly after dinner, we decided to go back to the abandoned campsite one last time before complete darkness fell. The goal wasn't curiosity as much as it was making sure its owners hadn't returned without us noticing. Each of us carried a flashlight, and we walked along the exact same path we had taken just an hour ago. I was walking in front, and I was sure I remembered the way well, because the distance was short, taking no more than a few minutes. But after we reached the spot where the campsite was supposed to appear, we found nothing. I froze in my place thinking I'd taken the wrong direction. I stepped forward several meters, then walked back. I checked the map and looked at the GPS. Everything confirmed we were in the right spot, but the campsite had vanished completely. The tent hadn't been removed and the items hadn't been stolen. Not a single trace was left indicating a campsite had ever been there in the first place. The ground was covered in a continuous layer of autumn leaves. No footprints, no stone fire pit, not even a mark from the small wheels that were under the folding table. Every single one of us kept looking at each other in silence, trying to find a logical explanation. Then Jack broke that silence when he said in a low voice I had never heard tremble like that before. Jack said, "If we all saw it, then where did it disappear to in less than an hour?" Not one of us moved for several seconds after we discovered the campsite had vanished. I was standing in the exact same spot I had stood in less than an hour ago, trying to remember the smallest details. I was certain there was a large rock next to the tent entrance, a tree trunk leaning to the right, and a circular stone fire pit with old ash inside it. None of that was there now. Even the ground itself looked different, as if someone had completely rearranged the forest during our absence. Jack tried to convince us that we got the location wrong, but the GPS device was showing the exact same coordinates we had logged when we first reached the campsite. I opened the trail log on the device and the red dot was stopping at the exact location where we were standing. Practically speaking, there was zero chance we had lost our way, and at the same time, there was no longer any trace of that campsite. For the first time since the trip started, I felt that the logical explanation I was clinging to began falling apart piece by piece. We decided to return to our campsite and not risk staying out after dark. None of us talked while walking, and the sound of our footsteps over the dry autumn leaves was the only sound breaking the silence. As we approached our tents, Jack suddenly stopped and raised his hand, asking us not to make a sound. We followed his gaze and saw something I haven't been able to explain to this day. There were fresh footprints in the damp soil around our tents. They weren't animal tracks, but rather prints of hiking boots, exactly like the boots hikers wear. I bent down to inspect them and noticed they circled around our tents multiple times, then stopped in front of each tent entrance for a few steps before moving away toward the trees. These tracks weren't there when we left less than an hour ago, because the ground was damp enough to hold any new imprint. And stranger yet, when we tracked them several meters into the woods, they ended abruptly at a patch of open ground without continuing in any direction. There was no trace of the person turning back, nor any sign of jumping or veering off. They just ended, as if the person who left them vanished into thin air. Tension started rising among us, but we tried to hold on to whatever composure we had left. We zipped our tents tightly and decided to take turns staying awake until sunrise. The idea was simple. One person takes watch for 2 hours while the others sleep. I took the first shift. I sat next to the fire that was gradually dying down, while the fog slowly crept between the trees until it covered the ground completely. About 40 minutes passed without anything happening. Then a faint light coming from between the trees caught my attention. The light looked like the glow of a distant campfire. At first, I felt a sense of relief because the presence of another camp meant we weren't alone in the area. But as I focused my eyes more, I realized the light was coming from the direction where the mysterious campsite had vanished. I quietly woke Jack up and pointed to the spot. He stared for a few seconds, then whispered, "That's impossible." We grabbed our flashlights and walked very cautiously for a short distance. The closer we got, the light would disappear, and when we stopped, it would show up again at the exact same distance, as if it was moving away from us at the very same speed we were approaching it. After a few minutes, we realized we were walking in a direction with no end, so we pulled back to camp immediately. When we got back, our blood ran cold. One of the tents was open. It wasn't ripped, and its zipper wasn't broken. It was opened quietly, as if someone knew exactly how to open it without waking whoever was inside. I ran toward it, shouting Ethan's name. Nobody answered me. His backpack was in its place, his phone was on top of the sleeping bag, and his watch was on the ground next to his pillow. Even his boots were still inside the tent, but Ethan wasn't there. We went out shouting his name in every direction until our voices started fading among the mountains, but no response ever reached us. With the first light of dawn, we reported to the search and rescue teams, who spent 5 full days combing the area with helicopters, tracking dogs, and thermal equipment. They didn't find a single trace of Ethan, nor did they find evidence of anyone else being in that location, except for the boot prints, which had disappeared before they arrived due to the night rain. Months later, the investigation officially closed as a case of a missing person in a mountainous area, and the file was shut without answers. As for me, I couldn't just end it like that. After I got home, I kept reviewing the photos my camera took during the trip, trying to find any detail we might have missed. And in the very last photo taken just minutes before Ethan disappeared, something appeared that I hadn't noticed before. In the background of the photo, right behind the trees, the abandoned campsite had reappeared once again. The tent, the table, the chairs, everything was right in its place. But this time, 4 people were standing in front of the tent. 3 of them were us. As for the 4th person, it was Ethan. He was looking straight at the camera and smiling, even though at the exact moment that photo was taken, Ethan was standing right beside me,